Hi, welcome to SS 8.4 Tessellations. There are three sub-outcomes here talking about tessellations. Explain the properties of shapes that make tessellating possible, create your own tessellations, and identify them in the environment. Now, tessellations isn't something that you might think about very often, but you actually see them all the time, and they're really cool. So instead of talking about tessellations, I found a few videos that can show you. So just when you thought that tessellations were boring, a tessellation is a shape, like Mr. Fish, that repeats. To make a pattern. Only three basic shapes will tessellate. Triangles, hexagons, which have 6 sides, and squares. There are 3 rules. Translation, which is a slide. Rotation, which is a turn. And glide reflection. Okay, this little video by TT and Martin shows you how to make your own tessellation. The first thing he does is use his scissors to make a square. And he says tape is very dangerous. You have to have adult permission. On his square, he wrote on the 4 corners, part, P-A-R-T. Then he drew just 2 random lines. They can be curved or straight, whatever. It's funner if it's curved. Then he's taking the scissors and he's going to cut along those lines, and he will end up with 4 separate pieces. Now you rearrange your shapes to make the word trap. And this is where the dangerous part comes in, tape. The more accurate you are with this step, the better. And then you can use that new shape to trace onto a piece of paper, and it should tessellate. You should be able to draw it over and over and over. This is a slide tessellation. He's just moving it over or sliding it down. And then you can get all fancy and color your tessellation if you want. And as you saw with the fish tessellation, you don't have to color each and every one. You can do something different inside each one and do sort of a random pattern. Here are a couple good examples of how tessellations can be used in art. These are coloring books, pretty popular nowadays, and just makes me want to color. But this is just squares. They've just turned the paper on an angle, and so it's just rows of squares being tessellated with a design inside that repeats. This is the one with the owl is probably a circular tessellation, and they've just repeated that all the way through. Even though a circle doesn't tessellate, I guess technically it would be a square. Oops, gone farther. So these are just squares, and then they drew the owl in the tree over top. Here's some examples that are already colored in. Some of these were done by students, and some were by maybe computer generated. This one with the elephants, or is it dogs? Maybe it's dogs. So you can tell that the dogs were just a triangle with the curly tail, and what those triangles represent, there's 6 of them, so that makes your hexagon. They're kind of outside the lines there, but with the faces, it's hard to tell what shape they started with. It might have been a triangle, and then they did the, you know, curly thing with the wiki sticks and had the half deal going on the bottom line there. The ghosts, it could have been a triangle, it could have been a square, but the tessellation is just a repeat, a slide translation. Okay, I love this video because I finally figured out what to do with wiki sticks. I think we have some in the school. If you want to get a hold of me, I can find you some. Wiki sticks are a string that has been covered in wax, and so it can stand straight up, or you can bend it and turn it into different shapes. So in this example, they're using the wiki sticks to do a tessellation. And this is using one small triangle, so that's where we start with. And she takes a wiki stick and makes a shape from one vertex up to the top, and you press that against the paper and make sure it's good and stiff and it's not going anywhere. And then they're going to trace that line with a pencil. Then they gently lift up that wiki stick, and being careful not to adjust the shape at all, keep the same shape, and slide it over to the other vertex and retrace that shape. Then they do halfway, so putting it down on the bottom vertex and going to the halfway point of that bottom line with the wiki stick still bent in that same original shape. And so that those two curves really match each other. So you're going to trace half a curve. It says gently lift your stick and turn it clockwise around the bottom. And so it's that same shape as what's on the bottom. It's just split in half. Continue the half base, turn, and trace process around the triangle. Then you can use markers to put something decorative inside. So this person has chosen a dragon, and once you've cut that out, you can tessellate it and draw mini dragons. Okay, so in review, what have you learned from watching these videos? Identify translations, which is slide, reflections, and rotations. Those are the 3 ways that you can tessellate. Predict which shapes, which 2D shapes will tessellate. So even if they're an irregular shape, like, you know, it's kind of a triangle, it still would tessellate. So triangles, squares, and hexagons are the only 2D shapes that will tessellate. And that is because their angles are factors of 360. So we know that a triangle is 60, I guess an isosceles triangle, or an equilateral triangle is 60, 60, 60. And a square it's 90, 90, 90, 90, and a hexagon, 6 sides, not a very good drawer today, also has a factor of 360, and that is why those shapes will tessellate. Design your own, so you can follow the part/tarp method if you want to create your own, or the triangle in the wiki sticks. And you should be able to identify different tessellations that you see in the environment. We see them all the time in coloring books, in artwork, in wrapping paper and wallpaper, and even in First Nations art. We see them a lot of the time in beadwork and in quilts. And make a new tessellating shape by transforming a portion, which is what they did with that dragon one, of a known tessellating shape, and use the new shape to create an Escher type design. So we know all about Mr. Escher and his artwork. Alright, I want you to go find some wiki sticks and try that out because it's cool.